Light rail completely changes how we build community and how we connect people to school and work and success in life. And what I tell people is light rail projects will die 1,000 deaths before the first passenger ride. Yeah. Is it conceivable that President Trump could derail the project? Yeah. Is it likely? Probably not.
Public transit, especially the Southwest Light Rail Project, is one of this program's recurring issues.
I think the wonderful thing about this group is we haven't really lost sight of the fact that we're doing this for the residents of our region. We're working hard to improve their transportation options, to get them from here to there, to jobs.
We've had mayors, city council members, county commissioners, Met Council members, and regular citizens tell us why the Green Line extension is important. They've told us that large and small employers, seniors, students, and those who cannot or prefer not to ride cars or buses want Southwest Light Rail to be completed.
Right, and the importance of these transit systems and the importance of the connectivity to the jobs is, as you know, our state is facing a workforce shortage.
And the Federal Transportation Administration ranks the Green Line extension, that's Southwest Light Rail, among the top 5 light rail projects it wants to fund. But yet again, Republican legislators are attempting to trip up this long in planning project. Met Council member Jennifer Munt returns now as Governor Dayton is likely to veto any transportation bill that will kill the project. Jennifer Munt represents Met Council District 3 that includes cities in the Lake Minnetonka area. 2 of those cities, Eden Prairie and Minnetonka, will be served by Southwest Light Rail. Welcome back to Democratic Visions.
Thanks, Tim. It's a pleasure.
So Jennifer, you referenced earlier the Green Line extension, and just for our viewers, that's the 14.3-mile extension at a price tag of who knows, but it's presently valued at apparently $1.86 billion. So what is going on with respect to that? I mean, it was supposed to be bid, but the bid has been delayed, I think in part because the contractors need more time to assemble their bids. But when do you think the first dirt is going to be shoveled on this project, so to speak? What's going to happen? When are we going to have this thing in place?
Tim, I am an eternal optimist, and construction for the Southwest Light Rail line will begin late this year.
Good. So
that passengers can hop on and ride in 2021.
Great.
Now, we just did a poll of the state of Minnesota and discovered that 54% of Minnesotans believe that taxpayer dollars should fund both Southwest and Bottineau.
Good. Bottineau being the extension of the blue line up north, is that correct?
So the Bottineau line is about 13 miles, and that will connect downtown Minneapolis through the north side to Golden Valley, Robbinsdale, Crystal, and on to Brooklyn Park. Bottineau would begin construction in 2018, and like Southwest Light Rail, passenger service would begin in 2021.
Wow, you'd be running 2 major projects at the same time?
Yeah, the way that the federal government funds transit projects is they like you to put together a couple different projects that can be built at the same time.
That's the plan. Then, of course, you have to tell us, if you would please, how is this going to be paid for?
Half of it is paid locally. So locally means local funding partners. So Hennepin County.
Non-federal government, is that what locally means?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Met Council, Hennepin County, and the state of Minnesota. And the other half would be paid by the federal government. So right now, the federal government is ready to pony up nearly $1 billion in federal match.
I see.
Now, 84 Republican legislators wrote a letter to the Secretary of Transportation saying, keep our $1 billion.
Exactly. We don't want it, or we want to. Actually, didn't they say, we'd like it if we could, well, can you give it to us so we can build some roads and bridges? I think that's what I recall the part of the tenor of the letter was.
Yeah, it's asinine, Tim.
Well, what's going on? What happened? Who did they write it to?
84 Republican legislators from Minnesota wrote a letter to U.S. Secretary of Transportation Chow asking her to withhold nearly $1 billion of federal funding.
You're making this up.
I'm totally serious. I cannot believe this. So what would happen if she did that is they would take $1 billion that Minnesotans need and deserve and give that to a light rail project in a different state. So that's what Republicans are suggesting. Fortunately, Secretary Chow, who has a personal relationship with Governor Dayton, heeded the governor's letter instead.
That's right. The governor wrote a letter saying, those guys are just kidding. Didn't say that, but what he said was, disregard that if you would please. This has been planned and it's being implemented, and we don't need this kind of grandstanding on the part of the Republicans. I'm not paraphrasing his letter, but I'm sure that was the intent of his letter.
Tim, it's an insult to decades of planning, people who anticipate riding.
Planning on every end, the people in the Metropolitan Council and the people that are planning the project, the communities along the way, and as you indicate, the individuals are going to be served by the system.
Exactly. We've already seen development along the Southwest Light Rail line in anticipation of revenue service beginning in 2021.
Anyway, so that letter got stamped, returned to sender, and sent back. Is that how that worked?
That's right, but we need to hold all 84 of those legislators accountable.
No question about
for
it.
wanting to piss away $1 billion.
No question about it. All right, so you've got the federal government willing to kick in about $1 billion. Is that like signed, sealed, and delivered? I mean, what if President Trump decides he doesn't want to do that? Is that still a possibility?
Well, I'm an eternal optimist, and what I tell people is light rail projects will die 1,000 deaths before the first passenger rides.
That's interesting.
Is it conceivable that President Trump could derail the project? Yeah. Is it likely? Probably not.
Okay.
And the good news is 2 things happened this week. We learned that the federal government has got Southwest in the transportation bill. So that's really good news. And the second piece is that the County Transportation Investment Board has moved to dissolve, and that would allow Hennepin County to increase the sales tax for transit from 1/4 cent to 1/2 cent. And that would allow us to raise enough money that we wouldn't need the additional state portion that Republicans refuse to provide. CTIB is a joint powers agreement between 5 metro counties, Hennepin, Ramsey, Anoka, Dakota, and Washington. They agreed years ago to assess a 1/4 cent sales tax to fund transit build out throughout the region. That group decided this week to dissolve. Their divorce means that Hennepin County can raise its sales tax for transit up to 1/2 cent, which will allow it to pay for the state's share of Southwest Light Rail.
And this is an amicable divorce. Dakota County and others got what they wanted out of the dissolution?
Hennepin County Commissioner Peter McLaughlin led the negotiations,
He's
and
good.
he was able to satisfy Dakota County that they could take away their share of the funds.
Good for him.
Dakota County became concerned that they weren't getting their share of the sales tax fast enough.
Well, they were, in other words, they probably were taking the position, the money's being raised out here and we don't see the commensurate level of expenditure or service being provided out our way. Is that another way of stating their position in much of an overview?
I think that's a fair way to state it. Peter was able to buy out Dakota County and find a resolution to allow the board to dissolve. And what that means is that Hennepin and Ramsey counties would be able to increase that transit sales tax from 1/4 cent to 1/2 cent, and that would raise enough revenue that Hennepin can build out its system and Ramsey can build out its.
And that means that between Hennepin and Ramsey, they'd be picking up the state's 10%?
It means that Hennepin County would be able to raise the revenue to pick up the state's 10% for Southwest Light Rail.
I gotcha, okay. And I hate to bring this up, but is it any prospect that the legislature would try and reach back and disenable Hennepin County from being able to raise the sales tax to the level that it has to be raised in order to fund the state's portion?
I think the Republican legislature would be hypocrites if they did that.
Yeah?
First of all, it is common practice for counties throughout greater Minnesota
Oh, really?
to assess a wheelage tax to pay for their roads and bridges.
Okay.
If Hennepin can't do that for transit, then that would set a very dangerous precedent for greater Minnesota counties who need better roads and bridges.
Well, the upshot of what we've just been talking about here for a few minutes is that I I perceive that you're of the mind that the funding is there, or it's capable of being there with Hennepin County proceeding in the fashion that you just described. Have I read the tea leaves correctly there?
That's correct, Tim. And you know, let's face it, Southwest Light Rail has been a decade in the making.
It's going to be a boon to this area. I mean,
That's
it's
right. All 5 cities along the line support it. They've already got developers building transit-oriented development in anticipation of the light rail coming.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take a look at where the job growth has occurred in the metropolitan area, there has been more job growth in the West Metro than there has been in Minneapolis and St. Paul combined. People want to live here, they want to work here, but not if they have to spend more time in traffic than they do with their families. Light rail is fantastic for people of all stripes, but in particular, millennials choose where they're going to live first, and then they choose where they're going to work.
That's interesting.
That's different than my generation. We found the job, and then we decided where we were going to live. Millennials first choose where there's a quality of life, and then they find the job. So businesses here know that they cannot attract the best and the brightest to a community that is parking lots. And what you're seeing across the country is suburbs that were built for automobiles are now redesigning themselves for human beings so that people have the opportunity to walk and bike and use transit. In 2040, we will have 140,000 more jobs than workers. The
What?
beauty, that's right. It will be a workers' market. And so light rail creates an opportunity for people to get to school, to get the education they need for the high-paying jobs of the future. It provides development opportunities so that we can have more affordable housing. And it creates opportunities for us to build the kind of communities that we want and need for a bright future.
This April, a poll conducted for the Star Tribune of 800 registered Minnesota voters found that statewide 54% support light rail transit. And in Hennepin and Ramsey counties, more than 75% support the Green and Blue Line extensions.
I drive through the Crosstown Commons every day, and it's misery. I spend more time in traffic than I do with my family. And we need some solutions so that people who choose to ride the train can do that.
I love riding the train. It gets you from here to there, with a minimum of fuss, and it runs on time, and it's clean, and it's super expedient as far as I'm concerned.
Light rail completely changes how we connect people to school and work and success in life. So I'll give you an example. Let's take a family that lives in an area of concentrated poverty in North Minneapolis. The light rail will give them the opportunity to live in affordable housing, to connect to living wage jobs, and that will create a workforce for the folks in the suburbs who are going to find it difficult to attract a talented workforce.
Well, Jennifer, this is all very, very interesting, and thanks for being with us again on Democratic Visions.
My pleasure, Tim.
For more information on Southwest Light Rail, visit www.swlrt.org. Democratic Visions is handcrafted by volunteers from Eden Prairie, Hopkins, Minnetonka, Edina, and Bloomington. Watch us on select cable systems and on our YouTube channel. This is Carol Sundstrom.